So about a month ago, I made a tutorial on how to create your own one-shot manga. In that particular tutorial, I felt like I didn't give all of the information I could have given, and it felt like I wasn't really putting my best content out there. When I'm uploading videos, I really like to put out the highest quality content I can, so I decided to remake that particular tutorial into a much bigger guide on how to create a one-shot manga. In this guide, I want to take you from start to finish on how you can create that one-shot manga and prepare it so it is suitable either for something you're just creating for fun or something you want to submit to a contest. I hope you enjoy this video and it helps you with your manga creations. If you don't already know me, my name is Medibang, and on this channel, I dedicate all my videos to helping you turn your manga into a masterpiece. I'm currently working on my own manga titled Having Faith, which you might hear me talk about in today's video, but also in other videos on my channel. Now, if you're new to my channel and you'd love to see more videos just like this one today, please consider subscribing and hitting that little bell icon to get notified every time I upload something new. I upload a new video every Sunday and Thursday all about manga creating, and I would love to have you join me on the channel. So first of all, let's answer the question, what is a one-shot manga? A one-shot manga is a comic book published as a single standalone issue with a self-contained story that is not part of any ongoing series or miniseries. One-shot manga are usually written for contests or for serialization in manga magazines and are sometimes later developed into full-length manga series. Series such as Narrator, Death Note, or One Piece started off like this. Of course, one-shots can also be completely standalone and don't need to be developed any further, which is the case for many of Junji Ito's horror one-shots. One-shots are normally 60 pages or less, however in some one-shot manga competitions such as Medibang's shounen manga contest, the limit is 50 pages. If you're writing a one-shot for a competition, I recommend you check all of the requirements first before you go any further and develop your one-shot manga more. So first of all, before we go any further and talk about how you can create your own one-shot manga, let's talk about the technical details first. These are details such as page sizing and margin sizing for publishing purposes. So manga are a form of Japanese comics or graphic novels originating from Japan. Manga can be published in a variety of genres and can range from being long series to short one-shots. So manga usually start off as being serialized in Japanese manga magazines before being published into book form. Manga, which are also called tankoubon in Japan, come in a variety of sizes. The most common sizes are 5.04 inches by 7.17 inches or 5.83 inches by 8.2 inches. However, when Japanese manga is republished in the US, it is given a more standard printing size. That standard printing size is 5 inches by 7.5 inches. So manga pages are commonly drawn on B4 deleted comic paper, which have measurements written on them. The measurements are there to help the artist know where to draw and where the pages might get cut off in printing. If you don't want to buy B4 comic paper, here is how to draw these measurements on regular paper. So here I have a template I specifically created for A4 paper. Now you can also use ratios on this and ratio it to fit A3 paper. However, since A4 is the most commonly used size for paper, I decided to make the sizing chart specifically for that. You can also use this overlay chart to overlay on top of your digital manga pages to check if they are the correct size. I have this full template in the description with the sizing and without the sizing, so you can check it out down below. If you're just following the sizing chart for your drawn pages, here are the sizes I used. So first of all, with your full A4 size paper, it should be 21 centimeters in width and 29.6 centimeters in height. Now for each box I have in this overlay, first is the bleed area. Now the bleed area width should be 18.6 centimeters and the height of the bleed area should be 26 centimeters. Now the trim size area, the width should be 18 centimeters and the height of the trim size area should be 25.7 centimeters. Now the width of the safe area should be 14.7 centimeters and the height should be 21.5 centimeters. So overall, you want to focus on having your most important content in the safe area. So this is your dialogue or main character expressions. You want to keep them in the safe area because this is the area that will definitely stay safe when it is printed. Now with the trimmed size, this is the area that the full size of the manga page will go to. So the edge of the trimmed size border is where the edge of the manga page will be. The bleed area is where you can put some stuff over the edge of the bleed area, but it could get trimmed off in printing, so you want to be careful about that. So overall, you want to make sure that your main content is kept within the trimmed size area, and you want to make sure your most important content is kept in the safe area. Again, as I mentioned before, you can find this full template for free to download in the description below. My first tip for creating a one-shot manga is to choose your medium and your supplies. Now this is important whether you're choosing digital mediums or traditional mediums. Now for me personally, since I'm drawing my manga digitally, I use a program which is Paint Tool Sai, and I also have a digital drawing tablet which is an Intuos Pro drawing tablet. There are so many digital drawing tablets out there, so when looking for the right tablet for you, consider the price, the size, and the sensitivity. A tablet with a stronger sensitivity will help you draw the lines more naturally and add more natural weight to the lines when you put more pressure on the pen. You also want to consider the size, of course, so if you have a small desk, you might want to choose a much smaller tablet, whereas if you have a bigger desk, a bigger tablet might be able to fit more easily. Then of course you also have the price. You don't want something that is too cheap because it might not have the quality that you really want to get at in your drawing. However, if you're just a beginner and you just want to try the digital medium, then a cheaper tablet might be the way to go. But if you plan on doing this more regularly, then you might want to consider more average price tablets and just see if there are different tablets that may suit your needs a lot better. Now here is a list of free and licensed digital drawing programs. I recommend you check out each of these programs and choose one that suits you the best. I also put links in the description to each of these websites so you can check them out yourself. Now when it comes to traditional supplies, here is a list of supplies that you may want to use for your one-shot manga. Now of course there's B4 deleter comic paper, and this is paper with the proper margins and sizing for professional Japanese manga. However, as I mentioned before, you can also simply draw the correct sizing onto regular A3 or A4 paper. Now you may also want a blue mechanical or wooden pencil. A lot of professional mangaka will use a blue pencil, and this just means that when the page is scanned, those lines that are drawn in blue pencil will disappear. You can also just use a regular graphite pencil. I recommend that when using graphite, you choose the lightest possible for sketching. Some pencils I like to personally use for sketching are mechanical pencils or 2B or HB pencils. Now you will also need an eraser. A plain white eraser is better than a kneaded eraser as there is less risk of smudging. However, always use the tools that you prefer, and if you want to use a kneaded eraser, that is perfectly fine as well. Also consider getting a ruler. You might want to get a long ruler for the borders and a smaller ruler for the smaller details in the pages. You can also get triangle rulers or circle rulers to help with various shapes in your pages. Now next you want to consider inking pens. My preferred inking pens for manga are Artline 400 and 200 pens, Sakura Micron pens, and Copic multi-liners. For this stage, choose a pen with a small nib so you can ink the small details. You can also use brush pens for inking if that is in your preferred style. There are Faber-Castell brush pens that work really well. There are also G-nib pens, and you will need ink cartridges for those, or ink bottles. So G-nib pens are what a lot of professional mangaka use, though it might be a little bit difficult to use if you are still learning. There is also more risk to using it as well because you're using ink bottles or ink cartridges, so there is more risk of you spilling ink on your drawings. Now there is also toning. If you don't want to use screen tones, you can just use grey pens or grey pencils. It can create a really nice effect even without screen tones. There are grey packs of Copics that work well, or you can get grey packs of pencils. Now you can also purchase deleter screen tones. These are tones that you can paste onto your drawing and cut away with a small knife. To make your manga pages pop, you may also want to get white ink. You can buy white gel pens, bottles of white ink, or simply use white paint with a paintbrush to add highlights to your pages. Check out the description below for the links to any of these products I mentioned in my video today. So the second step to creating a one-shot manga is to brainstorm. Now that you have all of the supplies you need, you are now ready to go further and actually plan out your manga. The next step is brainstorming, and this is about getting the ideas out of your mind and onto your paper. It can be a little overwhelming at the beginning if you're not really sure what kind of one-shot story you want to create and you have all of these ideas bouncing around in your mind. You sort of want to write those ideas down so you can look at them and analyze those ideas and consider how you best want to use those ideas in your story. This will be especially important if you are planning on submitting your one-shot to a competition, because usually in the Japanese manga competitions, they will usually have a kind of theme that you might want to consider. So of course, if you are creating it for a competition, make sure to check out the competition requirements and see what kind of theme you need to work with. If this is just for fun, then feel free to write down any ideas that come to mind. I recommend that when you're first brainstorming, get all of the ideas out of your mind and onto your paper. So write down any of those ideas. It doesn't matter how random those ideas are or whatever those ideas are. So if it's just some random bits of dialogue you might be thinking about, random characters or anything like that, just write them all down on paper until you basically empty your mind of ideas and you have them on paper so you can look at them and analyze them a lot better. Once you've written down all of the ideas in your mind, it's now time to narrow down those ideas and analyze them properly. I recommend that once you've done this basic brainstorming phase, you look over your ideas and you circle or highlight the ones that stand out the most to you or the ideas that you might want to focus on the most in your one-shot manga. As well as this, as you are looking at your ideas, look at multiple ideas and consider ways you might be able to merge those ideas or shorten those ideas, because I wouldn't say to do this in a regular manga, but since this is a one-shot manga, you want to narrow down your ideas and try and keep things as simple as possible. So if there are ideas that are really similar to each other but you like both of those ideas, try and merge them together in some way or shorten them in order to shorten it more for the purpose of a one-shot manga. If you have more ideas that you've brainstormed but they might seem too complicated, make sure to save those ideas for future reference, because of course if you might not use them in this one shot, that's okay, you can use them in future stories and future one shots you may create later. Right now you just want to choose one idea or a few major ideas that you want to really focus on in this particular one shot, but of course you can save any other ideas you have for future use. Now here are some things you might want to consider while brainstorming to help you with the process and think of even more ideas. Try and answer these basic questions when planning and brainstorming for your one-shot. So think about who are the main characters. 2 or 3 main characters are best for a one-shot. You want to keep it as simplified as possible. What are their goals? What is the main problem in the story? When is the story set? And where is the story set? Why do your characters need to achieve their goals? How will the characters achieve their goals? Essentially, a basic storyline for a one-shot should be like this. The main character has a goal, but there is a problem stopping them from achieving that goal. Over the course of the story, they overcome that problem in some regard and they reach a resolution. If you look at most one-shots, they will usually follow this kind of structure. In Junji Ito's Enigma of Amigara Fault, which is a really creepy manga, the main character's goal is to come and see the mysterious event where human-shaped holes have appeared in the side of a mountain. The problem is the fact that everyone feels extremely compelled to find the hole shaped like their body and basically crawl into it. The character does overcome that problem in one way or another and the story is resolved. Even if you look at regular longer manga, they will usually follow this very basic structure. Even over a longer story, there will be a goal, a problem stopping them from that goal, and then some sort of resolution. I recommend for your one-shot, you could set out these 3 things. What is the goal? What is the problem? And how is that problem resolved in one way or another? It doesn't have to be a good resolution, but it has to be a resolution. The third tip is write the plot for your one-shot in a single sentence. This will help you to know if it is appropriate for a one-shot. Ultimately, you want to be able to describe the plot of your one-shot in a single sentence. If you can't summarize it down into a single sentence, then you might want to look over your plot and shorten it a little bit or cut certain things out to make it more suitable for a one-shot. As I mentioned before, any other ideas you have can be used in future stories. This is just about simplifying it enough to make it appropriate for a single story. My 4th step for creating a one-shot manga is to write a basic plan. Now that you have the basic ideas for what you want to include in your one-shot, you now want to break it down further and actually plan out that one-shot so you know what you actually want to create in it. Write about what happens in the beginning, the middle, and the end. You likely would have planned a lot of this in your brainstorming, but this is just about putting it in a more clearer list so you have something more clearer to follow in the next steps. My 5th step to creating a one-shot manga is to design your characters. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you should have at most 3 main characters. You don't want to have too many main characters because otherwise it can get a bit too confusing for your readers. Ultimately, you want to have characters that are easily memorable, but characters that really add to the plot and don't take away from the plot. Of course, you can have other minor characters, but ultimately you want to just really focus your one-shot more on just your main characters. There are 3 elements to a character, and that is story, personality, and design. So the story is usually about their past. What makes them the character that they are now? In a one-shot, this is best kept to a minimum. So maybe your character is a hard worker because they were pushed to do so. Maybe a relative is ill and it has made that character into someone who is very compassionate. A backstory for a character in a one-shot doesn't have to be detailed and can be simplified through showing more in images rather than directly having the character say things about their backstory. Now next is personality. Personality can be shown through the way the character acts and speaks. So if a character has a kind personality, they may be there to help others or give advice or even just be there to listen. And finally, design. One-shot designs don't have to be as eye-catching as a design in regular manga, however it should still be something that stands out among other stories. Try giving them a hairstyle that ties into their personality. So a character who is shy may cover their face with their hair, or a bolder character might have shorter hair that shows off their face more. Their outfits should also relate to what they do in their daily life, but also show who they are as a character. Keep their designs simple, but make it enough so the reader may be able to understand things about that character without even needing to read your one-shot. You ultimately want to be able to say a lot about that character just from looking at them without having to describe too much about that character on your own. The sixth step to creating a one-shot is choose the main problem. Now, as I mentioned before, your problem is essentially going to be one of the most important things in your one-shot. It's going to be something that is there to drive the story. Now, it doesn't have to be a major problem either. It could just be something as simple as your character is shy and lacks confidence, and they need to gain more confidence over the course of the story. The problem really depends on what kind of genre you're writing and also what other things you have brainstormed earlier. Obviously, the problem in a shoujo manga would probably be a lot different from the problem in a horror manga or a fantasy manga. Now, the seventh step to creating a one-shot, and this is optional, is choose a main message. Now, sometimes if you look at some one-shot manga, you'll notice there will be this overall main message, and this is usually the case for a lot of one-shots that have been submitted into competitions. Having a main message is usually more dependent on the genre, so if you have a horror one-shot, there usually won't be a main message. However, in other genres, like a shoujo manga for example, there may be a bigger main message that the writer of the manga really wants to get across in the story. So as I mentioned before, usually in one-shot competitions, if you look at the winning one-shot, there will usually be a main overall message that is told throughout the one-shot. It will usually not only follow the main theme of the one-shot competition, but there will also be some other kind of main message that the writer got across in that one-shot story. A message in a story is the theme and message that you want to get across to the people reading it. So here are some examples of themes that you may include in your one-shot manga. So one example is friends can become family, the environment needs to be protected, even with our differences we are all the same, the smallest words can change someone's life. Now, there are many messages you could choose to include in your story. To find the message that is right for your one-shot, especially if you are entering this into a contest, look at the theme and the requirements. For example, in the most recent silent manga audition, the theme was Together for Peace. Now from this, you could come up with various main messages to focus on based on that theme and related to the main message of finding peace together. Here are some examples of main messages you could choose if you were choosing to go with the theme Together for Peace. You could choose a message like, books can bring people together. You could choose a message like, even with our differences, we are all going through the same difficult situation in different ways. We can find peace through our shared experiences. Working together can bring peace. Or, animals are our friends too. So just from looking at that main theme, you can come up with various main messages that you might want to focus more in your manga. Adding a main message in your manga or one-shot can really help it to connect to readers more, and readers who have also had that experience with that same message will be able to relate to your manga more and feel more connected to it. My eighth tip is choose a narrator and viewpoint. Even if this is a manga, there will usually be a narrator or a point of view that your one-shot is told from. Normally, this will be the main character, however, sometimes it can also be told from the perspective of a side character. To make it even more unique, you could choose to have the perspective of your one-shot told from the viewpoint of a minor character who is seeing the events in this story unfold. Now, when talking about viewpoints, there is also omniscient third person, and this is when there is no narrator present, and usually this is the case in longer series when there is switching perspectives. For example, in Naruto, there might be moments where it switches to Sasuke's perspective or another character's perspective, and that is omniscient third person because it's not told directly from Naruto's point of view, who is the main character, but it can switch between different characters. In a one-shot, this kind of viewpoint may be more difficult to use since you are only telling this in 60 pages or less. My ninth tip is begin your one-shot manga in the most appropriate way. Now this also is really dependent on the kind of genre you choose. For example, if your one-shot is more of a horror one-shot, it would probably start with a lot more action or drama to really emphasize that genre. It may start with something rather shocking or scary or startling to your readers. Whereas if it's something more meaningful, then you may start by introducing the characters more. So it's really dependent on the genre, and how your genre is will really emphasize how you start your one-shot. Knowing what your story is about will really help you to know if you should first start on a really action-based note and really drag your readers in at that startling action, or if you should start it off more in a kind of dramatic way, or if you should start it off more by slowly introducing your characters. It's really dependent on the genre, so in a fantasy you might want to show the world more, in a horror you might want to start with some more action, and in a drama you might want to start by just introducing the characters first. Whatever your genre is, consider your genre and consider how it would be best to begin your one-shot in order to really get your readers interested in it. My 10th tip to creating a one-shot is to write a basic script. Now, as this is a one-shot, it doesn't have to be super detailed. It just needs to be enough to give you enough information to know what is happening in that scene and what you want to include in that scene. Of course, if this is a silent manga, then it will be a script without dialogue, and you will just be writing about the actions and what is happening in that scene. When I'm personally writing my script, I like to write about what is happening in that scene and the dialogue. Here is an example of how I usually write my own scripts. Show a small country house in a large field surrounded by flowers. Sitting on the steps of the house is a little girl. She picks a strange flower and holds it up. What is this flower? Of course, this is a really basic example, but I just wanted to show you how I balance the settings and what's happening in the scenes with the dialogue as well. Now, if you want to really narrow it down, you can also write your script by page and panels. Here is another example of how you could do this. So you could say page 1. Panel 1, wide. Show small house in the country in a large field surrounded by flowers. Panel 2, show little girl sitting on the front steps. Panel 3, she looks down in surprise. Panel 4, show strange looking flower. Panel 5, girl picks up flower. Panel 6, girl holds up flower and says, what is this flower? I personally write my script in the first method because I leave the second part up to the storyboarding. However, you may prefer the second method in order to plan your panels more. It's totally up to you how you choose to plan your pages, and I think you try both methods and just see what method would work better for you. So my 11th tip is break the script down into pages. Now, if you were writing the script in the second method, you would already do this. However, if you're choosing to use the first method of script writing, I recommend you look at each part of the script and consider how it should fit into pages. I personally like to draw storyboards so I know for sure. I sketch out each part of the script into panels, and through the panels, I get to see how I'm going to break it into pages. This allows me to plan for double pages as well. You can also just draw lines at where you want each page to end. The method you choose for dividing it into pages is completely up to you. My 12th step to creating a one-shot manga is to sketch the storyboards. This is a follow-up from the previous tip. Your storyboards are simply sketches of your panels and what will happen in them. They are very rough sketches. So in order to make your page plans look interesting, try and use a range of panel shapes and various angles. When starting a scene, show a wider angle of where that scene is taking place, and then show a closer image of the characters in that scene. When it comes to preparing the panels, try thinking of your page as divided into 3 columns. Your panels should follow that similar 3-column method in order to give it proper spacing. When sketching the storyboards, also consider reading direction. If you're entering a competition, there may be a certain reading direction that you need to follow, such as right to left. Overall, you want to try and draw the storyboards so someone may be able to understand what is happening even without having dialogue. This is when you know that you have effectively used gestures and characters to show a scene, and someone reading it can tell what is happening even without that extra dialogue. My 13th tip to creating a one-shot manga is prepare panels. So if you're doing this traditionally with your prepared pages, draw in your panels based off your page sizing. So ink your border around the main edge line and then draw the panels within that box. Draw your lines in pencil first and then draw the following border lines in darker ink. So if you're inking your panels digitally, I personally like to open up the size chart in a program called Paint.net, make a new layer, and then draw the borders on top. When I ink my manga traditionally, I used to print out the panels afterwards, but now I just transfer the panels into Paint Tool Sai directly. You can also ink the panels in Paint Tool Sai or any of your other chosen digital programs, but I find it more difficult to get the borders straight. It's up to you how you prepare your panels, but just make sure to follow the required sizing, especially if you want to print it in traditional manga printing standards. And just as a side note here, when you are putting your pages into digital copy, keep the resolution high. If you are scanning your traditional pages onto your computer, make sure the resolution is 300 dpi to 600 dpi, and that is the same with digital pages. Keep the resolution to about 300 dpi to 600 dpi and the page size quite large. You ultimately want to be able to zoom in and see your drawing really clearly without any blurriness. If it is blurry, then the resolution is too low. So you want it to be high enough and have the quality high enough so that it can be reprinted in good quality. So my 14th step to creating a one-shot manga is to ink the pages. So if you're inking it traditionally, you can use grey pens, pencils, or screen tones. If you're inking it digitally, you can use similar shading techniques in the program of your choice. So when I'm inking pages, I like to use a mix of white, grey tones, and black tones to help it stand out more. If a page looks too flat, you might want to add more solid black tones or solid white tones. It adds contrast to a page and helps it stand out much more. Also keep in mind that when inking, you can add certain tones that can give various atmosphere. A more positive scene might have lighter tones, and a darker scene might have darker tones. When inking my pages, I like to use a cross-hatching method to add extra texture. The main form of cross-hatching I use is two line textures going opposite ways. If I want to make it more gradient, I add more cross-hatching in that particular direction to make it darker in that area. When it comes to hair or sometimes clothing, I draw lots of little lines going in the same direction. Experiment with cross-hatching in your artwork to add more texture to your manga pages. So the 15th step to creating a one-shot manga is finalize the pages. So if you didn't follow size guiding, that's okay. You can resize your pages in paint.net. The page should be resized to 5 inches by 7.5 inches, and that way there should be enough room for the page to be trimmed. If you aren't following regular manga page sizing, check with your chosen printer what the size of the book will be, if you plan to print it of course. For example, if I was going with a more paperback size for my manga, the size could be 6 inches by 9 inches, so I would resize my pages to that size. However, also check if there needs to be room for the trim with your printer. Whoever you are printing your manga with should have information on how big your pages be, the cover, the front, the back, and the spine. Of course, if you aren't planning on printing your manga, then that won't apply to you. If you are entering your one-shot into a competition, make sure all of the pages are the right sizes and resolutions. Usually those details about page sizes and resolutions will be listed in the requirements of the contest. My 16th step to creating a one-shot is design a cover, which is completely optional as well. If you plan on publishing or self-publishing your one-shot, you might also want a cover. A good cover should help your potential readers to know what your book is about. You can design your cover digitally or traditionally. In your cover, I recommend you sort of give your readers a taste of what your book is about without giving everything away. When I am designing covers, I like to try and put a sort of cliffhanger in the cover. Something unexpected usually works really well. So the covers of Attack on Titan and Demon Slayer are good examples of this because both of them show something unexpected and leave the readers with a question that can only be answered through reading your one-shot. The back cover of your one-shot should also describe your one-shot without giving too much away. I recommend you keep things very simple here, just enough to entice your potential readers and make them curious to know what happens in your book. You will also need to consider the spine, but of course, with a one-shot of only 60 pages or less, that spine will be very small. Make sure to check the measurements with your printing company to see how wide and tall the spine will be. Normally, the measurements will be listed in your printing sample. So my 17th step to creating a one-shot manga is prepare for publishing. Now normally when publishing a regular manga, I would say you should condense it into a PDF to send to printers. If you look at the requirements for most self-publishing printers, they will normally want the papers in high resolution condensed into a PDF file. If you are following this tutorial to create a regular manga, then this program, Image to PDF, may help you. You can find that free download link in the description below. What you need to do is you need to put the cover, the spine, and the back cover into a single PDF file on its own, and then you also need to condense all of your other pages into a single PDF file. If you want to know more about the details of this process, you can check out one of my older videos on self-publishing manga. So since this is a one-shot manga, you may be planning to submit it into a competition. A lot of one-shot contests don't actually accept the final version in PDF. Using Silent Manga Audition as a reference, this is how they accept their pages. Each entry should be a set of JPEG files named in sequence with page numbers 01, 02, 03 attached at the end of the file name. If your manga is chosen to go press, we may request for ready for print quality data. That should be layer flattened .psd or .tiff files. Each page of manga should be saved as single image files unless the image is intended to go across a double page spread. So each contest will have different publishing requirements, so I recommend you check each contest for the specific details. It's important that you follow these requirements as you want to have the highest chance of having your manga chosen. So my 80th step to creating a one-shot manga and my final step is publishing it. So when looking at publishing your one-shot, there are 3 methods you could choose. There's online publishing, self-publishing, and traditional publishing. So here are some ways you can publish your one-shot and get more people reading it. So the first method is online publishing. You can of course publish it online, and you can upload it onto different webcomic sites such as Taptastic, SmackJeeves, or Webtoon. You can also create your own website and publish your one-shot there. Now of course, this is also related to online publishing with a contest. Again, each contest will be different. Some contests might want you to submit it directly to the website, or others might want you to send it by email. Make sure to read all of the requirements to send in your manga and submit it so you can get it in front of those readers. Now usually, one of the prizes from a one-shot contest is the chance to get published in a Japanese manga magazine. So if you win a one-shot contest, then it's likely you would also have the chance to get published in the traditional way. However, getting in a Japanese manga magazine in other ways is difficult, so if you want a higher chance to get published, it may be better to look for publishers in your own country and contact publishers directly. Having a one-shot manga is a good way to show potential publishers what your work is like and help them decide if they want to hire you. However, do keep in mind that when showing your one-shot, a lot of publishers will likely expect you to further develop that one-shot. A one-shot is a good way to show an example of your work to most traditionally published companies, but if you are wanting to go further and further publish that manga, then you may have to be willing to further develop your one-shot. You can also self-publish your one-shot, which is a much easier process. You can self-publish your one-shot through a printing company such as Print Ninja or Kablam Printing. As well as this, there are also print-on-demand services, which are certain self-publishing companies that you can publish with, and they'll send out copies of your book every time someone purchases it. Now with a one-shot, this might be a little bit too much for a one-shot, because this might be something that's more proper for a regular book. However, if this is something you would like to do and you would be interested in it, I have links to print-on-demand companies and regular printing companies linked in the description below so you can check it out. Thank you so much for watching my video today, everyone. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know what kind of one-shot manga you're creating, because I would love to hear about it. Feel free to chat with me on any of my social media at Finalize. I always enjoy hearing from you. If you have any questions, feel free to chat with me there. And again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!